Welcome to Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. You can find us online at hancepodcast.com, and we love getting your email. Send it to info@hancepodcast.com. We start every episode with a saying of the day, and what do you have today?
Saying of the day today is Rome wasn't built in a day, but it burned up in one night. You have to be careful in your profession that you can work on something, and then get in trouble or something go bad and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. So, stay in tune with the reality and don't get out and try things that haven't been tried before that would cause you major problems.
That saying kind of goes hand in hand with trouble rides a fast horse.
Trouble does ride a fast horse. One of my favorites is that when trouble comes up, that horse is going fast, and you're stuck with it, and it's hard to change things. People accuse somebody of something, and they'll deny it, and then all of a sudden it gets in a shouting match or just a contest of who's going to be the most outright spoken on the issue. And then something may come up later that destroys what they were saying. And when there's conflict, I always look and go back to one other saying, no matter how thin a coin may be, it will have two sides. Today, September the 9th, more people are born on September the 9th than any other day of the year. And the studies show that. The month which has the most births is September. The next is August. The next is July. And the one that have the fewest, February, because it's got a short month, and that 3 out of at least 4 years. And then January. And they've done studies about what caused it, September the 9th. I think it goes back to the holidays. It's New Year's Eve. Everybody's out, had too much drink or something, and they're sexually active, and all of a sudden, there it is. And they say 40 weeks, 36 weeks, but that would be about 9 months and 9 days. And so that I wasn't involved and didn't finance any study or anything. I just think it makes sense that that's probably what caused it.
Simple arithmetic.
Yeah, just 2 + 2 is 4, and and you're just going down the road. Does that make sense? Saying in the last couple of weeks, I've done 3 eulogies for friends of mine. One was Jerry Hodge. Jerry and his wife Margaret, good friends of mine, and he was a great businessman, and but he was pretty well until about a year and a half ago, and then he had a stroke and had some other problems, had cancer, and but he lived a fruitful life. He was for Amarillo. If I called him to help Texas Tech, didn't matter. He always said, "No, which campus?" If it's Amarillo campus, he's going to do it. If it's Lubbock or Abilene or Midland, Odessa or El Paso, you're wasting your time. And the baseball park there is named for him.
Where did Mr. Hodge find his success? What did he do?
He was in the pharmaceutical business. He owned a drugstore. He bought a drugstore when he was about 21, 22, wow. and the people were trying to get rid of it. And he got it for almost nothing. And he said, and that was not a bargain. And he was he was competing against Walgreens and Skaggs and people like that. And the guy that he bought meat from at the supermarket, the guy asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to go discount, I think, and try to run those other people out of business." And the guy said, "You can't go discount and run Walgreens out of business. You can't do it." He said, "Anybody can sell ground hamburger meat, but," he said, "you got to have a T-bone to charge a little more." He said, you ought to look at delivering." He said, "A lot of these old people don't want you could charge them $1 to deliver." They started doing delivery. His business just boomed. And then he was on the prison board, Governor Clements, and he came up with a new way to to buy medicines for the prisons. And the prison system in this state's big. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in prison. And he came up with a way to do it and did it and didn't make any money on it, but figured out he could do it in other states and be free to make money. Mm-hmm. So he did it in other states, and then he did it for hospital chains. He did some research for research hospitals like Johns Hopkins. And that's where he met Margaret, his wife, who was really a stalwart for him. And his last year and a half been tough, but he was very successful and was a good mayor of Amarillo, and had a full turnout at First Baptist Church. And then I did one the next week from a friend, Autry Stephens, in Midland. And Autry was an oil man in Midland. Forbes listed him as 26 billion, not million, but billion. And he grew up in De Leon, Texas. And in his graduating class of 75 people, Ben Barnes, who was lieutenant governor of Texas at one time, was in the same graduating class. And they played football together. And Autry was a running back, and Ben was a lineman. And Ben said he always liked for him to call Autry's name because Autry was so fast he could get through, and you didn't have to hold so long. And everybody always laughed at the Barnes and said, you just didn't have to hold as long. Hold your block, he meant. But Autry did a lot. He was the only highly successful oil man I've ever known. Didn't have an airplane. And one time they were having a oil Wildcatters meeting in San Francisco. He was late getting there. And they said, where you been? He said, my connection in Phoenix was running late. And they were all, they'd flown Gulfstreams, Cessna Citation, and all kinds of planes. And they were just like, oh. And I made the comment one time, the word got out that he was about to sell his company and buy an airplane, and the stock of Southwest dropped 30%.
Can you explain for our listeners that may not know? You said Wildcatter.
Wildcatter's the guy that name came about, back early in last century. And Wildcatter's the guy. He'd go drill where there wasn't no oil, where there was no oil well around for 10 miles or 100 miles. Mm-hmm. And they were a risk taker. And they also lived pretty high on the hog and pretty low, depending on what was happening at that time. But you don't have as many wildcatters. They've got an organization, but I can't think of a time that somebody's told me that they drilled a dry hole.
Technology.
It just changed, and that with new technology, they knew where to drill and would go in and do it. One of the things in Midland now, I flew into the airport for that funeral, and it was there were two big rigs by the airport, not the international airport, but the downtown airport in Midland, and they were drilling, and they would drill down and make horizontal wells, and they were going under the town, and my friend David Arrington's one that set that up, and everybody said, that's crazy, it won't work. He went door to door getting oil leases for someone's house, and it'd give him a little payment, and everybody said he can't do it, and he did. That's a great thing about this country, and we've had some people on here that have talked that have been great, that they didn't have any advantage. They had a lot of disadvantages, and they still made it big. In Midland, Javed Anwar, a good friend of mine, he came here from Pakistan, and his mom worked several jobs to make sure he could go to an American school. He went to an American school in Pakistan. And somebody asked him what he was going to do, and he said, I'm going to America. And they said, what are you going to do when you get there? And he said he didn't know. And they said, well, you ought to go in the oil business and go to the University of Wyoming. He had never heard of it. He came to Wyoming. He had a one-way ticket. And they said, you better make it. We don't have enough money to buy you a ticket back. And he waited tables in the dorm and worked his way through school, then worked for a couple of companies, then went out on his own and has really done well. And he loves this country. and does a lot of things, to help different organizations. Have been very generous. But you take people like that, if some guy can come from another country that's tens of thousands of miles away and do it, you can do it. And Autry Stephens was highly successful, but he had some times in the 90s that, it was close, that he wasn't worth $1 billion. He's trying to get up to be worth zero, he used to tell me. I want to be worth a zero again, and was a good guy. The other fellow I did the eulogy on was a friend of mine, an old fraternity brother named David Hart, and he was friends with my friend Spider Lundgren. He introduced me to Spider and said Spider knows everybody around Austin and got a lot of contacts. They were friends in Houston when Spider had a used car lot, and they came up with an idea. They had an ad, and the ad said, "Ask for the main manager. He has brain damage." And said they thought it was be kind of a funny joke. He said you'd be shocked the number of people would come out and they'd go, "Let me talk to the manager, the main manager. I won't visit with him." And they had some car they'd paid $5,000 and they had it listed for $9,000. They'd get to talking. The person would tell them that's too expensive. And they say, "Yeah, we'll take off $1,000, off the $9,000, and that way you'll owe us $7." And they'd jump to pay that $7 because they thought they'd taken advantage of somebody, and so they were trying to close the deal as fast as possible. And I've told this before. Spider's the one his mother went to see him, seeing how he's doing. He'd just gotten out of high school. He was living in Fort Worth, working up there. Didn't know what job. His parents didn't know what job. They went to see him. His mother came back and told his dad, "He's really doing well." Said he's got so many friends. Said he had 5 or 6 telephones in his apartment. They were all ringing all the time. And, anyone that has 5 or 6 phones in an apartment, they're probably making book. Statute of limitations is run, so don't do anything to him. But he's a funny guy. And
did Spider stay in the car business, or did he go on to something else?
No, he stayed in the car business and got a Chevrolet dealership and was very successful. And then he got into some other business, and I think he's in the gravel business now. And but I told stories about him and David Hart. Hart was a good guy. Hart moved. He was not afraid to take a chance. He'd be in Belize. Then he moved back to Lubbock. And then he had moved to Costa Rica. I told him if I'd called everybody in the fraternity and said, "We got a member going to move to Belarus next week. Who is it?" They'd all said David Hart. And
he wasn't afraid of an adventure.
No, he loved life. Had a great family, and he died of West Nile disease, and got a mosquito bite.
Really?
Yeah, and just a tough situation.
You never know, right?
You don't. Those are 3 guys that 2 years ago, all 3 of them were as healthy as I am. They were all doing well, and you don't know when your number's going to be called. And so you kind of got to be ready. I one time made a speech. My granddaughter's there, and I said, "If I die, I want such and such." And she came up there afterwards, and she said, "Granddaddy, you need to say when I die, because it's certain." I said, "Thank you." I did, and I went back and listened, and I had said, if I die, but that's pretty certain.
Reminds me of that old song, church song. I don't know if you remember it. When the roll is called up yonder,
I'll be there. Yeah. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there.
Yeah.
That was a hymn. I always liked to go to a church that had hymns, and there was a preacher here in Austin at a church, and he's really good, but the music was bebop and Jesus kind of stuff, and I didn't like it. And they one day at the end of church they played Wild Thing. I didn't understand what that was all about, but I quit going. I'd get there late, so I didn't have to listen to the music. But I always like these churches that have a hymnal, and that you can, there was a guy that helped at a church one time, and they told him, said, you've done a good job. What church song would you like to hear? And he said, I want to hear Andy. And they said, Andy? And he said, yeah, it's my favorite church song. And they said, and it's Andy? And he said, yeah. And they said, well, see. He said, Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me. And so he was on top of it.
Chancellor, big week this week if you're following the presidential race, because Tuesday night we've got the one and I believe only debate between former President Trump and Vice President Harris. It's on ABC. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I think Trump, what his people got to do, and Trump's going to be Trump. I mean, he's not going to be easy to say, you go out there and do this or do that. I think that he's got to stay on the issues and not make it personal, just to kind of ignore that. When Clady Williams was running for governor in Texas against Ann Richards, she attacked him on something. He refused to shake hands with her. And it showed a video of that, and it really just killed him in his campaign. I think that Trump can say, I think that somebody may be offended, something I've said along the way, and sorry if I am, but I'm trying to keep them from defunding the police. I'm trying to keep them from raising your taxes. I'm trying to keep them from increasing regulations. Use about 4 or 5 of his top spots that on what he would do. I think that he'd do a lot of damage to her on that. She said and consistently said that she's for defunding the police, and he needs to make that an issue. Most people don't think that's a good idea, and there's a few cities where the city leaders say, well, it'll just be better that way. We'll get social workers. If you get armed robbery, we'll get you a social worker come over there. Yeah, I don't want a social worker. I want some guy with a gun that's going to shoot him, and then interview him later, get their attention. And I think her position, that what her people have got to do is to try to make her appear to be intelligent and on top of the issues. The national media will be for her. And, when Biden did so poorly in the debate against Trump at first, it was a situation that it got him out of the race. As I had mentioned before, I was watching it in Bermuda. We just had CNN and showed the talking heads. As soon as it was over, they were going, did you see that boy? He was really bad. Golly, he's impaired. The rest of us known that for 3 or 4 years, and they had kept it quiet and moved on.
Can I ask you a quick question? Yeah. Going back to the preparation of Trump, he appeared in the first debate to be well coached, and that he listened to somebody that said, hey, let him hang himself. Give him enough rope. And he did that.
He did.
So it makes me wonder if that same person or group of people that's preparing him for this one, if he'll listen to him and do as they say. Well,
Trump's problem is that he gets in a debate like that and the other side says something that triggers, and he goes after him. He is a New York developer and a really good one. And so he's going to say he's trying to close a deal. And if you have a weakness, he doesn't like to sit by and let it be exposed. But what he's got to do is expose it in terms of policy and move forth. I was surprised this weekend that Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney didn't surprise me, but I was really surprised that Dick Cheney came out and endorsed Harris. I mean, he and Harris have not had any common issue in their lifetime. Big campaigns are going to be in the U.S. Senate, and that's you got a neck and neck race in Montana. You got John Tester, who's a big guy, and he's got a flat top, and he looks conservative, and he talks that way. But when he gets back to Washington, he votes with Chuck Schumer every time. So you got that. The Republicans pick up the seat in West Virginia, Manchin seat, and the governor will get that. The next one is Ohio. You've got Brown versus Marino, and that's a state that Trump's going to win big, and so Marino has a chance. Then you got Pennsylvania, McCormick, Casey. Casey would normally, his dad was a senator and governor, and he would have a normal edge. But McCormick's a good, solid candidate, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think McCormick's got a chance to pull off the upset. And then Maryland, you've got the Democrats facing Hogan, who used to be governor. He's more of a moderate Republican, and he has a chance. He was very popular, so we'll see. And I think that you got close races in Nevada and in Arizona. So you got several races that if the Republicans win two of them, that puts them in the majority. And then, if you wound up with a tie, it depends on who wins the White House, because the vice president will be in there breaking ties.
Mm-hmm.
The House, a lot of people thought that it could go Democrat. There's a possibility, but it's going to be very close either way. I think the Republicans have made enough. Speaker Johnson has really done a good job of kind of calming things down. And, they were trying to overthrow him at first. Some of them were. And if you spend all your time trying to overthrow your leaders, you're probably not going to get a majority of the people to vote for you next time. But that's kind of settled down, and they're working hard to see what they can do on picking up additional seats.
What about the Senate race here in Texas?
Senate race here in Texas is thought of as closer than it was. Cruz had 16-point lead at one time, and now the latest poll showed him at 8. I think Cruz will win, and that the opponent, Colin Allred, he voted in 3 terms 100% of the time with Pelosi, not 99, not 98.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's not got anything like that. He's got good sound. He's trying to portray himself as a conservative or moderate,
mm-hmm.
and the Republicans and the Cruz people are trying to hit him on the votes that he's taking.
And immigration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that the board, that the wall was racist.
Yeah.
How's a wall be racist?
Mm-hmm.
That's impossible to me.
Chancellor, here's a story out of New Jersey where a 50-year-old man got into a fight with his girlfriend, and I guess to get even with her, he set her parents' house on fire. Everyone got out safely. That's probably not the best way to handle a breakup.
I saw that. If you're 50 years of age and you've got a girlfriend and you set her parents' house on fire, you should be in the edition on stupid criminals.
Mm-hmm.
That was just amazing to me that someone would do that. And I guess, did they think they're not going to get caught? If you think you can commit a crime and not get caught, watch Headline News, the Forensic File program. Mm-hmm. And with the forensic files they have in this day and time, you're going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
Prisons are full of stupid people.
They really are. People that think they're smarter than everybody else, and they're not. Have you ever been to Brazil?
I have not. I've been to the southern part of Brazil, but have not. Sao Paulo is one of the largest cities in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the Asian cities and take them out, Sao Paulo, I mean, it's huge.
And they just had a football game there. The NFL played a game down there. I was just wondering if you've been down there. I saw the story about Brazil banning Twitter.
Yeah,
which is hard to get your brain around.
Yeah, I don't. There's certain people that want to do away with free speech
mm-hmm.
and our constitutional rights on that, and they say, well, it may upset somebody. Well, that's it. I mean, they're afraid that it'll offend somebody or it's hate speech, and you go back to burning of the flag. People, have a right to do that and protected by free speech. And the people now, people used to be really for it on the left, the very liberals were for free speech. And now it's kind of gone the full circle, and the conservatives are the one pushing hard for free speech.
Didn't someone once say the best thing for bad speech is more speech?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
You don't let people say what they want to, and some of them may be right, and some of them may cause you to start listening.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Guy in Florida got a compliment for his car, and he thanked the guy for the compliment by punching him.
I saw that. You know, the guy said, "That's a nice car," and the guy chased him down and slugged him in the face. You know, what would he have done if he had said, "That's an ugly car"? You know, he might have just shot him, and that shows bad judgment. You know, you have to be careful in this day and time. You don't know who's had a big fight with their spouse or whoever, and they're just looking for someone to take it out on.
Yeah, and you approach a car, or in Texas especially, there's a pretty good chance that person in the car might have a gun.
I always think, somebody asked me about guns in class, and I bet, you know, I've got 100 and something students in my class. I'll bet you there's 20 or 30 that have a gun in the backpack. You know, I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, it's just, that's a fact of life.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Best Storyteller Podcast, and we do love getting your email. Send it to info@HantzPodcast.com. Chancellor, as we wrap things up, I want you to remind everybody of your saying of the day.
Saying of the day was, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it burned up in one night. So be careful what you do. You know, don't burn up your whole career in one time, one night.